Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today we're going to be talking about Turok Rage Wars for the Game Boy Color, specifically the soundtrack for this game. This is a video I have wanted to do for a very long time. I've been trying to think of maybe putting it in a new series, but I'm just at a point now where I just want to talk about this game, specifically the composer, by the name of Alberto Jose Gonzalez. Maybe not a name you might recognize, but this guy has worked on a ton, and I do mean a ton, of Game Boy games, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. He has done other stuff as well, but everything that I've primarily heard by him is on the handheld device. The reason why I wanted to talk about this game's soundtrack in particular is this game and the sounds that this guy manages to do with the Game Boy Color in this instance are insane. I will give you a side-by-side of one of his tracks versus an older Game Boy title. But Turok Rage Wars on the Game Boy Color I quite like it. I don't know if it's considered good. I haven't played it in a very long time, but I liked it. But the thing that always stuck with me is how insanely good the music is, and how the Jose Gonzalez basically makes this whole soundtrack sing. So we're going to listen to like 5 tracks. They're not particularly long. They never were on the Game Boy Color, stuff like that. But let's just get into it. They're all named like BMG1, BMG2, sort of stuff like that. I don't know if they actually have actual names. But let's just go. In comparison to other Game Boy games, you're not going to hear... You see how full this sounds? You got like, bear in mind there's only 4 channels, right? So let's just start again. There's 4 channels playing on this. It's got the bass, you got the bass. You got the drums kind of beyond there. You got blep blep, and then the melody, right? That's all you've got really. But the fullness of the track is crazy. There's like a snare drum coming in there, sort of coming in underneath. But you can't tell me this is not insane for a Game Boy Color game. There's so many small little things being used here, like manipulation of notes. And there's a level of clarity to the whole thing. Something I will notice, you will notice with a lot of Game Boy games, is that blap, 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 blap sort of sound. It's like almost like a doubling, very quick doubling. That's usually like, I think it's a couple notes very quick next to each other, but it adds this kind of this effect. Tim Follin used it a lot. He was another composer on older games, and I think Gonzalez here has actually stated that Tim Follin, amongst other composers, big fan of them. A lot of the old Amiga and demo scene composers use this effect. But you can tell that this almost sounds a bit too good for a Game Boy Color. These tracks are quite short, so I kind of want to just sort of like let them play. But there's like, just through the headphones, there's like these little sneaky little pans in there, doubling of notes. We'll get that blep 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 thing come back in a sec, properly. It's also incredibly catchy. Blep 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 behind. So now you can hear it really clearly. So what I want to point out is how, obviously back in the day when you had limited technology and limited space, right? This track is what, 30 seconds long? If we go from the very beginning again. So we have this like intro bit, sort of setting up the track. So the melody comes in, plays a couple of times. So it's a little bit of a build, repeats that same melody. "15 seconds of music, and the main melody is like, and you have a slight variation. 15 seconds, we now go into the main melody, which is like so There's no wasting time on these old soundtracks. You need to kind of hook people in it immediately. So another 15 seconds. So you have that second part, so it's almost like that bit, and now we have the next part. It sort of modulates up and up. The blips and the bloops bouncing from headphones. I mean, this stuff probably was in mono. Maybe it was done in stereo. So 45 seconds is the main track. 15, 15, and then another 15 after that. It's kind of mad. And that's just the main melody part. So the track's like 51 seconds long. My point is that when you're playing a Game Boy game, and most of the levels in this game are probably no longer than about 5 minutes. There's a couple of auto-scrollers. You need that music to hit, and you need that music to be very catchy and draw you in. Obviously alongside the fact that there are sound effects and things going off as well. But let me compare this to this. And you might be thinking, hey, that's Super Mario Land. That's got a great soundtrack. It has. But listen to that fullness of that last track versus this. Listen to how little is going on. So we've got the main melody. The ba ba da ba ba da. Right, so we go again. We've got the main melody. And then behind you got that ba 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 ba, and then you got of the drums. Do you see the difference, like, between this game, which came out very early on, and that Turok track? Let's move on to the next Turok track. Okay, this is mind-blowing to me. I'm just going to shut up for a minute and just listen. Is that not some of the best, like, 17 seconds you've ever heard from a video game track on a Game Boy? Like, that bomb, like, it's basically like drums and a bass guitar playing. I guess the melody is that, and the bass is like boom boom underneath it. Like, I just find this piece of music absolutely, like, I can't believe this is coming out of a Game Boy. So many tricks going on here to make it sound so much bigger than it actually should be. So now we can't come into the melody now. That's 17 seconds in, right? We've got crashes, like the cymbals. It's that like that bouncing and like arpeggiated. A lot of arpeggiated instrumentation in these Game Boy games seems to really work with the tech that they were using at the time, and it just really fattens the sound. And that's one of the biggest things about this soundtrack, is that arpeggiatedness and just the fact that it sounds like there's like way more than just 4 channels going on. Now we come into like 30 seconds in, we hit the melody in a second. Here we go. We've got the full on drum beat. I wish I had like the stem files for this, because let's just go back and listen to that. Like, that section is insane. That sound going on with the melody over the top. So you've got the melody, you've got the bass, which is the and then you've got the blup 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 behind it, and then the drums hitting both sides. I mean, I don't know how you guys are listening to it, but inside my headphones, it's right and left for the different hits. And like, it's just so bloody catchy. I'm gonna let it play. I just love this so much. You know, this soundtrack is just insane, and I feel like, I don't know how many people have heard this soundtrack, but more people need to hear it. There's just so much going on, and yet there isn't, and it's just like, you have to excuse me gushing over this, because like, as somebody who absolutely loves like chiptune, this is some of the craziest. Because the drums are, but even that sounds bigger than. And we haven't talked about the melodies, just like it hits. Do, 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 do. It's almost like if this was redone, it'd be like a screaming guitar, that bit. There isn't much bad I can say about that track, just purely based on the fact that I remember hearing it for the first time as a kid, and just been blown away by just how catchy it is as a track. Let's just move on. There's more tracks to listen to. Okay, this is a fun one. This is a little bit different. There's a lot of like ghost notes to kind of add to this sort of effect, the melody. The one thing worth noticing with this track, I find that the drums pretty central in this track. They're not very prevalent, but there's so much melody. There's so much like the melodies like it's all over the place. You'll see the drums are taking a back seat. You're sort of keeping that beat. They come in a bit harder now on this bit. Just that melody bouncing off the other melody and the counter melodies going on there. That's 55 seconds, that track, right? And it's the use of that melody going diddle doo 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 doo, and then the other instrument going diddle 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 diddle, and then you get those sort of ghost notes that are trying to be used as a delay or an echo, or almost set up a different, like a ghosting of that melody. Let's just play it again. Yeah. Yeah, like that use of two melodies. I mean, that might be being played by the same instrument. Looks like almost gonna bounce. As we just say, they're trying to keep the melody going at that kind of speed and pace, because that's the thing when you've got limited limitations by the hardware. You want to keep it interesting. So in this track, you got that, and then it goes into the. It's just all over the place. It's constantly moving. And because it's either those ghost notes or some subtle panning, it sounds like it's bouncing. And what you get is just this incredibly catchy bop. And again, the melody. Like, I can't stress enough just how insane this is. This, I think, is my favourite one. This is what I'm thinking it is. Yeah, this is my absolute favourite on this. Just blows my mind, this one. very simple in a lot of ways. So let's just start that again. The bass is going do 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 do, and that's kind of the driving force. The drums are like doof, doof, ba, doof, 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 ba, and then you've got the bum 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 with the sort of echo going on. It's a lot simpler, but see how it progresses and it changes as the track goes on. There's like a whoa 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 noise in there. Feels a lot more spacious than the other tracks we've had, especially that last one. So we get the change. Like a lot of like effects, like whoa, and stuff like that. It's a very different feel. I absolutely love this. I'm going to go out on a limb, so this might be, or probably is, the greatest soundtrack for a Game Boy Color game. And there's less for me to say about this track, but melodically, I love it. It's got this eeriness to it. It's got a very particular vibe. It's used on a lot of the cave levels in the game, which I think works pretty well. There's like an element of like, it's got that sort of vibe to it. It's like you're making progression, overcoming challenge. I love it. And those sort of effects that they use in this track, different to the other ones. You get that bum bum bum, but using that the echoing of it. But like this little bit of melody here. So I can't even begin to tell you how much personality there is in that melody. Like the feeling, this whole thing, and it's that. Oh, it's just, there's a vibe to it. And it goes up at the end now, so it's like that hope. It's just an incredible track. It's different enough from the other ones, where it's got a much more moody feel. Like the one thing this soundtrack is incredible for is setting the scene for what's on screen, the levels, and where they use different music. There's a good example of this with the very last track we're going to look at. This one is very boppy. So I know for a fact this one is used on quite a few levels, but it's used on one where you're infiltrating at a base. I love the fact that it sounds like an alarm going off at the beginning. Look, and then if you again just listen to that blub 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 thing in the background as it's rising up. And then the way the drums come in. You got that melody, which is very simple. Oh, listen to that change. It's like, this is a vibe. But it has that, like, it's used on a few levels, like I said, but there's like that sneakiness of it, which I quite like. And then we break it down. Oh, the doubling of that like melody there. Like almost a chord. And do you know what's really cool about that is it's like what Gonzalez seems to have done here is with that specific part, what it's giving off that vibe is that's building tension. So if we just bring it back a little bit. So you have your main melody, you're sneaking around, right, and then you have the breakdown. Build a little bit of tension, right, that's your first loop. Gets a bit louder, and then boom, 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 boom. And it's like builds until you hit this bit now. That melody just... And then we're back into the build. And you've got to bear in mind, these tracks are only a minute long a lot of the time. Like, you get... Each track seems to be in 3 parts. That seems to be the sort of structure of each of these tracks. It's sort of like the beginning, the middle bit, and the end bit. But what I love about this one is that it sort of bubbles up at the beginning, like a sort of like an alarm for urgency going off, and you get that melody, and then it has that do 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 do, and then it goes into sort of like what is the breakdown, the boom ba ba bum 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 ba ba ba, and then it builds that, and then we're back into the final part of the melody, like carrying on running. Sometimes it's difficult to explain this without some of the gameplay going on screen. But I think what's really important here is to highlight the fact that this is coming out of a Game Boy Color, right? And that's kind of mad. The fact that he's done an awesome job working this hardware. This is honestly my favorite soundtrack on the Game Boy. I think it's the best sounding soundtrack on the Game Boy. I don't think there is anything that sounds like this. Obviously, there are the other Turok games that he has done. I don't know them as well. But this one I honestly think is just mind-blowing, and growing up as a kid hearing this, like, I was very aware then that this was not normal for a Game Boy game. Like I said, if you listen to Super Mario Land, you can see it's very empty in comparison versus this, which is significantly louder. This video, like, I've really wanted people to go and check out this soundtrack. I really want people to go and check out Alberto Gonzalez's work, because everything he seems to touch is pretty fucking incredible. So what I want to do is, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you have, for people that don't know, I want to cover more soundtracks that people don't know, right? Like, because I think they deserve. Some games have soundtracks that are way better than they should ever be. This game is just a good game, and the soundtrack fits it perfectly. But there are games out there that people haven't played where the soundtrack is just that good. It is more deserving. Tim Follin is another example. Go and check him out. But Alberto Jose Gonzalez, this guy is a legend on this hardware. So I'm going to put a link to either his Wikipedia page, if I can find his SoundCloud and some of his other stuff. I want to put it in the description, because he deserves as much recognition as some of the other bigger composers up there. And quite frankly, this Turok Rage Wars on the Game Boy Color, like, I'm pretty confident that the soundtrack to this is probably better than the equivalent on, I think it was on N64. So yeah, hopefully somebody watches this, somebody gets some enjoyment out of this, they find something new to listen to and appreciate. But as always, thank you very much for taking your time out to watch this video. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to see more content like this, then hit subscribe. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below, as well as some stuff for Gonzalez down there, so go and check his stuff out. And until next time, I will see you next video.